Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I want to talk about the TV show Preacher. Obviously, like, I knew it was coming back for its fourth season. I learned about this a little while back, but I just recently learned that it is coming back for a fourth and final season, which I am a little bummed about, but I've always talked about that conversation of I'm always happy when something's going into its final season rather than just being like, oh yep, this got canceled so you never get the next season. So I'm very excited to see what they ultimately do with the show. Obviously, I've never read the comic book that the show, or comic book / graphic novel that the show is originally based on. So for me, the show is the only avenue I've ever known this story. So I know the show, you know, a little bit of comparisons I picked up just, you know, on the internet doing some research. Obviously, there's a lot of differences between the comic book and the TV show. So I'm actually curious to see whether this is actually going down the route of like, oh yeah, this is how this comic book ends, or will the TV show play out way differently than the comic book. That is something I'll have to do a little bit more research into. Obviously, you know, this video is just gonna be me talking about some of my things I'm curious to see, like, well, how we'll see, you know, season 4 play out. So I will be talking about spoilers. So if you are not caught up with Preacher, I highly recommend you don't watch this video because, like I said, I'm going into spoilers. But also, if you've never watched Preacher, I highly recommend you check it out. It is a great show. It's lots of fun. Which is weird to also say, just, I mean, fun on many different levels because it's just like a crazy show. So, but kind of getting into it, some of the stuff I'm curious about seeing about season 4 is I wonder will we get any look into Cassidy's past, because obviously last season was, obviously there were bits and pieces, but mainly season 3 dealt with Jesse's past as a whole, like everything related to him. So we kind of deep dived into that. Now, interestingly enough, with Tulip, we've gotten a little bit about her over the course of the series. Got a little bit of her in season 1, a little bit of her past in season 2, and in season 3, we learned a little bit more, in particular, like her whole relationship with her dad and her mom, that whole complicated situation. But Cassidy's one of those people, like, you learned a little bit about Cassidy in season 1, but beyond that, you've never really dived too deeply. Like, you know, like, oh, he was on the run from, like, vampire hunters. That's about it. And obviously, as the series progressed, like, there's been, you know, he's called up people for help over the course of the series who know about him being a vampire and trying to keep him on the low and stuff like that. Obviously, everything with Dennis, like, there was a dude he called to be like, yo, should I turn Dennis or not? It's like, how well do you know Dennis? And obviously, we know how the whole situation with Dennis played out. But obviously, it sounds like, I think it was the same dude he called back in season 1 when he first landed in Anvil, back in season 1. So like I said, I'm curious if they'll dive into Cassidy's past. It probably might not be like a huge part of the season, but I'm wondering will we kind of dive into that at all, or we just, because we definitely have gotten, like I said, bits and pieces, because I did kind of let that stuff run. It's like, yeah, that whole Dennis arc was like a big part of Cassidy's past. So, but I'm curious, are they going to delve any more into that? Maybe even more into Tulip's, you know? Because like I said, I feel like Jesse's story is like kind of like all around kind of done, at least in that regard when it comes to dealing with his past. There's still some stuff about where his mom currently resides, like her whole situation, because we know how it played out, but we don't know exactly where she potentially might be in all of this. Because someone had left a comment, I think, saying like maybe we'd see her in hell at some point in time. That might be something. I don't know. That's also another thing too. Like, how will hell get explored anymore? Because obviously season 2 we spent a good chunk of time in hell. Obviously season 3 popped back a little bit. But under the circumstances where hell is right now, Hitler is taking over hell. He's running hell. It's like, is that going to be a huge plot point? Is that just going to be something we pop back in it a little bit? Or is it just going to be like, yeah, that's its own thing and just it's existing? Like, I'm curious of how much of an impact that's going to have. Because we actually haven't really seen too much on the heaven side of things. Like, a little bits here and there, because obviously the Grail is the connection to heaven. But other than that, we've never really dealt heavily with heaven. There's actually never been any other angels that popped up. So I'm curious, is that going to be something we see, especially because of the whole Genesis situation? Like, you know, now that word probably got out about more people, you know, that Genesis is out there, we might see maybe more demons, more angels potentially coming after Jesse next season. I mean, because there's a lot of people gunning for him next season. Obviously, like, Hera is no longer protecting him because he's like, nah, screw the whole Messiah thing. I want Jesse Custer dead. So there's that. So the whole grill is going to be after him. We have the cowboy, aka the Satan of Killers, him coming after Jesse. For one, the cowboy has his own reasons, because it's like, oh, you were supposed to send me to heaven, but you didn't. The fact is, you're kind of on my shit list now. But then also the same thing applies to Eugene, because Eugene's like, yeah, you literally left me in hell. Let's not forget Jesse's thing at the end of season 1 is like, oh, I haven't forgotten about you. He's literally forgotten about Eugene as a whole. So that's definitely going to be an interesting conversation, especially considering the fact is Eugene literally has no one else, because obviously he learned to like, oh yeah, the whole town of Anvil is going, including his dad. So it's like, you know, he might blame Jesse because it's like everything went wrong because of you. I'm curious to see what that confrontation is going to look like. Then there's also everything with God. We still don't 100% know what God has planned. Whatever it is, we do know that he is scared of Genesis, and obviously he tried to use Tulip as a means of like, oh yeah, screw up Jesse's plans. But now, like, you know, everything's kind of out there. Like, I'm curious to see, is he going to try and throw more stuff in Jesse's way to kind of stop Jesse from fighting him? What is that final confrontation going to look like? What are the craziness as a whole will we find in season 4? Because let's also not forget, because obviously, like, you're going to have Tulip wanting to rescue Cassidy. Like, obviously Jesse and Cassie are, they're at odds. Like, they've been awkward since season 2. Like, you know, season 3 really brought up like tension in their relationship. But I'm curious to see, like, obviously, like, is Jesse going to be pushing for like, you know, we got to go rescue Cassidy? I'm sure Tulip is actually going to be pushing for that, but obviously that just puts you even further in the crosshairs of the Grail and stuff like that. So I'm curious to see how all this will play out. I'm also curious, like, will Jesse keep Genesis by the end of this series? Will it leave him? Like, I have no idea. Once again, I've never read the comic book / graphic novel, and I just don't know how they plan wrapping this up, because all that seems like to be the main things left kind of to be dealt with going into the final season. So it's not like there's a whole bunch. That's still quite a bit, but I feel like that's something that could easily wrap up in the final season. But I'm just curious about how they will go about wrapping it up. Also, another situation of, will our 3 heroes find themselves alive at the end of the season? Because you always have to worry about it, because you're like, I don't know. I'm also curious about Featherstone too, like where her and Hare will stand, because obviously we know Hoover died at the end of season 3, so where does that stand? Because that's a big difference too. Like, the whole Hoover and Featherstone storyline with connected to Hare plays out way differently in the comic book. I do know that, for example. So I'm curious, like, where Featherstone, you know, because obviously she's going to be gunning for Tulip because she really hates Tulip. I'm also curious, is there going to be any more going forward with, like, Happy Soul Go-Go, like, because obviously that played a role last season. I'm curious, like, because obviously that dealt with the soul game, and that obviously had to, you know, like the, you know, selling of souls and stuff like that, which was tied into Jesse's family. So I don't know if that'd be something we see going forward or not. I feel like it'd probably still play a role. Like I said, there's probably still more stuff to this world that could still be built out in the final season that we're just not aware of yet. But like I said, that's just kind of where my mindset is about some of the things we could potentially see kind of dealt with and answered with in the final season. Obviously, in the comments down below, let me know, what do you expect to see from season 4? Well, the final season, what do you want to see? I'd love to get to know your thoughts. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this video. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good